I took every brawler in Brawl Stars and randomly placed them in a massive bracket. Next, I made them play 5 different game modes to find one true winner, but there's a catch. A human is not controlling these brawlers. Are these bots going to do really stupid things? And really, which bot is the best in Brawl Stars? Will they go for broke? Or will they end up rich? And speaking of rich, now have you ever wished that you were richer than Elon Musk? Yeah, I mean, me too. But now you actually can be with today's sponsor. Adventure Capitalist is an idle game where you build a huge empire starting from scratch. You begin with a simple lemonade stand, but you upgrade it and unlock new businesses and eventually make your way all the way to Mars. They have a lot of limited time events to keep things fresh, and over the years, it's been wildly popular with over 50 million downloads. Adventure Capitalist uses humor and economical satire to make building your empire a fun and quirky experience. And the game continues to stack cash for you even when you're offline, so you're gaining progress even when you're not playing. Right now, Adventure Capitalist is celebrating their 10th anniversary with their Decade of Decadence event. This event brings brand new features, new suits, and even a new minigame that I got beat on badly. So whether you've played in the past or you're completely new to the game, right now is the perfect time to start your capitalist empire in Adventure Capitalist. So check out the link in the description and see if you can get to Mars before Elon can. Big thanks to Adventure Capitalist for sponsoring today's video. I made a solo showdown map, gave each bot one box that they could break if they wanted to, and then let them have at it while I ran away. Otis and Buster start us out by each grabbing the power cube before Otis takes the jump pad, which he doesn't seem too happy about before Buster takes him down. Both of these brawlers forego the power cubes, but Meeple takes the jump pad. However, Allie is thoroughly confused on what to do as Meeple chips her down and finishes her off. Shade strolls right over and hugs Sphinx right out of the tournament, and Miko, well, he didn't get the memo that he was actually supposed to attack the other guy and just hops to his death. Sam immediately throws his knuckle busters at Chester, but then just forgets to ever go pick him up. He does decide to run back and use all of his shots on a box to get a cube, but that gives Chester the chance to hit some shots, a stun, and one last one to finish him off while Sam cowers in the corner. Now normally, Sprout would stand very little chance against Melody, but here, he immediately drives her into the corner and finishes her off without much of a fight. Now the last match in the first round of this bracket pits Surge versus Mandy. Surge gets his box open right away, but then decides that he doesn't really need it anyway. However, after losing some hit points, he rethinks that and grabs the cube. With that, he feels ready to go in as he fires all of his shots before running out of ammo, while Mandy just unleashes that super and takes him out in a close call. So in round 2, we move this party to Gym Grab. Starting us out in Gym Grab in our first match of round 2, we have Dynamite and Buster, and right away, things do not look good for Dynamite. But he quickly gets himself back in the fight and makes a game-changing play. And then he camps, like, a lot. And after some patience, he comes out on top. Up next is Griff versus Grom, who both got a bye in the first round. This match was incredibly close, but in the end, are you really surprised that Griff won? 8-Bit and Meeple duke it out next, and this time it's not even close. 8-Bit demolishes Meeple for a win. Now Rico starts his match against Shade very strong, and although it's close, in the end he gets an incredibly clutch win, taking Shade out like the dirty laundry he is. Byron and Nita are up next, and even though Byron's got the range, Nita's health and her bear give her the edge for the win. Stu and Chester both bide their time against each other, but in a tense battle at the end, Chester is able to snatch the win right from under Stu's nose. Does Stu have a nose? Up next, we have Colt versus Sprout, and if you've ever faced a Colt bot, well, you know what he can do, and well, he does exactly that and dominates this match and moves on to round 3. Now for the final match of round 2, we have Ems and Mandy. Now Mandy may beat Surge, but Ems just melts her away. With that, we move on to round 3 and our contestants gear up for Brawl Ball. First up, we have Griff versus Dynamite. Dynamite scores a very early goal and the pressure is on. There's a lot of back and forth exchanging deaths, but Griff ends up taking him out and evening his score, and then Griff finishes the job and moves on to round 4. Then we have Rico versus 8-Bit. 8-Bit's strategy here is clear. Just use his high health to march his way down to a goal and take any damage along the way. And it worked perfectly. So without much of a fight, Rico is eliminated and 8-Bit moves on. Nita and Chester are up next, and from the start, they seem pretty evenly matched. Well, that is of course until Nita gets her bear and she's able to push Chester around with ease. Nita scores the first goal and Chester just isn't able to keep Bruce out of the fight, so Nita scores again and moves on to round 4. Now for our final match in round 3, we have Colt versus Ems. Both of these bots are crazy, and you can see early on that this was not going to be an easy match for either one. They both do insane damage and trade kills over and over again. Unfortunately for Colt, Ems is able to get a slight edge over him. Needing to make up for lost ground, Colt comes out hot with the super and actually manages to sneak past and get his own goal. After some close calls on both sides, the game goes into overtime where Ems is able to just barely get a goal in. Now for this round, we go head to head in Hot Zone. Now Griff starts out with absolutely no chill as he takes 8-Bit out twice like it's nothing. 8-Bit does make a slight comeback, but it doesn't last long, and for the rest of the match, he is absolutely dominated by Griff. Now for our next battle, we have Ems versus Nita. Ems starts out strong and takes an early lead, but then, just like the others, when Bruce comes into the fight, it gets a whole lot more complicated. So after a very promising start, Ems just can't handle the 1v2 situation she's in, and Nita takes the win. So for round 5 in the first bracket, we have Griff versus Nita. Now Griff gets the first kill, but kills, they don't really matter, goals do, and yeah, he gets the first one of those too. But Nita still doesn't have Bruce on the field, and we've seen how much of a difference that makes, and speaking of, just as we thought, it does indeed make a difference. Now after some back and forth, Griff makes another goal, leaving him 1 goal away from victory. Nita tries her best to come back, but with the clock ticking away, she's just not able to get a goal in time. And with that, Griff is the first one to move on to the final 4, but who will he be facing? To find that out, we move on to the next section of this bracket where Buzz faces off against Willow. In this round, Buzz wastes no time at all taking down Willow and securing his spot in round 2. Colette and Kenji are up next, and they both decide to take their time, collecting the power cube, making a plan, who knows what they were doing. They finally do clash, and after a very close fight, Colette actually misses her super, giving Kenji the perfect opportunity to slice her to bits and claim a spot in round 2. But before we get there, we have Trunk versus Juju. Juju really wants that power cube, but Trunk, he's having no part of that. Up next is Larry and Lori versus Leon. Leon takes the jump pad just to flex on the twins a bit, and then runs right back and finishes off the match. Doug and Ruffs just kind of seem scared of each other, and after 2 very close calls, Ruff finally puts the nail in Doug's coffin and moves on to the next round. Belle and Draco start out by grabbing some power cubes. Then, Draco has the idea of just rushing Belle and taking her out, and that's exactly what he does. Wait, what? Draco, my man, what are you doing? Whatever, Belle moves on to round 2. Mo and Jean start their fight with Jean taking a jump pad and then taking it again, just to end up losing to Mo anyway. Sorry, Jean, style points don't count. Pearl and Sandy go toe-to-toe next, and Sandy takes his time and farms Pearl down, which leads us into round 2 and back to gym grab. Starting us out in round 2 is Janet versus Buzz. Buzz gets a really quick start, but how will he deal with Janet's super? Just by waiting it out. Then Janet starts her comeback, and once she gets her lead, Buzz just can't get it back, and with 1 clutch kill, Janet moves on to round 3. Kenji looks like he is going to dominate, but unfortunately for him, once B gets control of the center, there's just not much he can do to get it back. Rosa gets a quick start against Trunk, pushing him around the map and using her shield to her advantage. This cycle goes on the entire match until finally Trunk gets bold and rushes her, but ends up losing the game instead. Carl suits up to face Leon, but unfortunately for him, Leon is the king of bot. Well, at least that's what I thought, until Carl proved me wrong, turning a very close match into a clutch win with just 1 gem to spare. Ruffs and Bull duke it out, and after a long fight, Buff shows that range always wins. BB and Belle seem very evenly matched, but after a lot of back and forth, moves on to round 3. Now you may think that Bot Poco would get stomped by Mo, but remember this, he has a fast reload, wide attack, decent range, good health, and a healing super, so Poco is able to beat Mo with relative ease. Now Sandy tries the same strat that Poco just used and keeps Jackie at arm's reach. And after some slight struggle, it does work out in the end, landing him a win. So with that, we move to round 3, and starting us out there, we have Janet versus B. Now both of these brawlers have some good range and damage, so it's going to come down to who can hit their shots better. B scores an early goal, which puts the pressure on Janet, and unfortunately for her, that pressure was just too much, and B moves on to round 4. Rosa does what Rosa does best, and that is to tank her way straight to the ball and an early goal. Now Carl tries to make something happen after that, but Rosa is just too bulky and ends up getting eliminated. Now Ruffs definitely has the range advantage, but BB is just too quick and too tough. After that, BB makes some very patient plays and sends Ruffs right out of the competition. Poco and Sandy are up next. Sandy scores on Poco in under a minute, and unfortunately for him, Sandy's attacks deal more damage than his does. And in the end, he ends up taking a loss and Sandy moves on to round 4. First up in round 4 is B versus Rosa. Make your guesses now because I was actually a little surprised by this one. Right away, B makes the mistake of trying to get up close and personal with Rosa and, well, I mean, we know how that's gonna go. But after that, she does take control of the zone. However, it doesn't last long as she just doesn't seem to understand range. Somebody get that girl a tape measure because Rosa takes her out of the competition. Up next is BB and Sandy. Sandy tries to just spam his opponents from range, and he does have some decent success, but BB is just a little too tanky, and she ends up taking him out. She does die to a super though, which is kind of funny, and like my randoms, and then they ended up trading kills on each other again. After that, Sandy and BB go back and forth controlling the zone, but BB is able to control it just a little bit longer, and she moves on to round 5. So representing this bracket in basketball, we have Rosa versus BB, the battle of the tank. Now Rosa may have her shield, but BB's got a bat and is able to take out Rosa very quickly to score a beautiful 2-pointer. Then she had the goal wide open once again, but for some reason decided not to go for it. And because of that mistake, she ends up conceding a goal on her side. Rosa sneaks in another goal by scaring BB away, and then after one more clash, BB dies for the first time in the game, and it leads to her losing the entire match. So there we have it. Rosa moves on to the semifinals where she will face Griff. But let's not get ahead of ourselves because we still have 2 more brackets to get through. Starting us out in the 3rd bracket is Eve and Gray. Now Gray desperately wanted to get that power cube, but Eve wasn't having any of it and went on the offensive. And after a few close calls, Eve ends up taking out Gray. Mortis faces off against Lumi, and he wastes no time getting right in her face and sending her packing. Barry has a somewhat rough start, but ends up getting powered up and taking out Jay Young after a long and strung out battle. Squeak and Charlie both go for the power cubes right out of the gate, and after some poking back and forth, Squeak lands the decisive shot that sends Charlie home. Cord and Lola both go for the power cubes as quickly as they can. Then Cord tries to rush Lola down, but she was not having it, and after getting sent into the Shadow Realm, Lola had enough and uses her clone to get the job done. Lily and Mr. P duke it out next. After a very close call, Lily gets her act together and takes the win. Maisie and Meg both go for the power cube, but Meg must have forgotten how much damage that Maisie can do, and she found out the hard way when she tried to rush her. Starting this out in round 2, we have El Primo versus Eve. Eve has a rough start with Primo rushing her and showing off his wrestling moves, but Eve is actually able to get back control of the center and keep Primo at bay, and that results in her taking home a win. The next 2 squaring off are Edgar and Bonnie. Now Bonnie has a lot of health and some good range, and she's able to keep it on Edgar for most of the game. Unfortunately for Bonnie, gem grab's not about kills, it's about gems, and Edgar clutches a win by taking his time and farming them up. Ticket just bullied over and over the entire game. Mortis is just like flexing on him, never killing him, just getting him low enough that he knows that he could. That is, of course, until Tick teaches him some humility and takes the win for himself, leaving Mortis humbled and embarrassed. Daryl doesn't want to end up like Mortis though, so he cuts out the pride and goes straight for the win. Shelly faces off against Squeak, and Squeak shows her very quickly that if she thought it was going to be an easy win, well, she can think again. Shelly regroups, but it just doesn't matter as Squeak blows her to smithereens and claims his spot in round 3. Piper and Lola are next, and I'm not sure what Piper was thinking rushing Lola, but obviously it does not pay off. Piper does get a kill, but Lola locks in and takes home a win. When Brock faces Lily, he almost makes the same mistake Piper did, but unlike Piper, his shots do full damage no matter what the range is. And with that, he's able to take Lily out and get control of the center to solidify his spot in the next round. Now, Bo thinks Maisie's a joke and just tries to rush her, only to be met with 3 quick attacks that take him out. And after that painful interaction, things don't get much better for Bo. Well, at least at first, because Bo does get control of the mine, and just 1 kill is all he needs to steal her gems and move on to the next round. And speaking of, it's time to head into round 3 and back to Brawl Ball, where our first match is Eve versus Edgar. Now Eve hits some shots, but makes a big mistake by getting just a little too close and gets taken out. This 1 kill lets Edgar get a free goal. Things were looking grim for Eve, but when she respawned, Edgar messed up his jump and accidentally gave Eve a free goal. Classic Edgar. With stakes high, Eve acts quickly, but she gets too close once again, and Edgar takes her out to win the game. Tick and Daryl start out with Tick doing what he does best, hiding behind a wall. Daryl, however, isn't going to let that slide, and he just grabs the ball and walks it into the goal. And when they respawn, yeah, Tick doesn't do any better and gets knocked straight out. Squeak takes his sweet time to get the upper hand on Lola. Lola, however, tries to make a comeback and ends up trading kills with Squeak a few times, but then she dodges his shot, gets a kill, and scores her first goal. Things are starting to look up for Lola, but Squeak didn't come this far just to lose as he takes out Lola and scores the winning goal. Now for our final match in round 3, we have Bo versus Brock. Bo turns on the jukes, closes the gap, and kills Brock very quickly and scores a goal to boot. And Brock was definitely not happy with this though, as he comes back with 2 kills of his own. Unfortunately though, it's just not enough, as Bo forces Brock to retreat and finishes the game strong with another goal. We move on to round 4, where we go to the hot zone and Daryl and Edgar face off. Now they both do some crazy damage up close, but Daryl does have the health advantage. They end up trading kills and the score is just about tied. Edgar makes a big comeback and gains a huge score advantage, but the match isn't over yet because Daryl takes the lead with a couple of very clutch kills. With the score tied, Edgar gets yet another kill and then the odds flip into his favor. Bo and Squeak are up next, and Squeak starts out strong, but Bo is just stronger as he gets an early lead on the zone. After this initial fight, they go back and forth over and over again, and they just can't seem to keep each other away. That is until Squeak makes the fatal mistake of stepping in Bo's mines. I know how that one feels. Bo takes his time to get even more of a lead, but Squeak doesn't sit idly by as he ends up getting a kill of his own. Bo does get control again, and Squeak just can't get back in there with Bo's mines in the way and ends up losing the game. That means for round 5, we have Edgar and Bo. Bo starts out doing what he does best by pushing Edgar away and giving himself the range advantage. But just like Eve, he got overconfident and Edgar closes the gap and takes him out, and in the process, leaves the goal wide open. Bo tries to get control in the middle, but Edgar jumps on him and crushes any dreams of that happening. However, Edgar's bot brain malfunctions and he retreats. Maybe it's just faulty programming, but this leaves the ball wide open and Bo picks it up and ties the game. Starting out again, Bo takes out Edgar very quickly and even gets the perfect opportunity to score, which surprisingly he does. Now the pressure is flipped from Bo to Edgar. So Edgar picks it up and channels his inner Jordan and sinks the shot. Now it's a tie ball game and the next score wins. Edgar gets a kill but is too nervous to even try to shoot. So Bo comes back, takes out Edgar, and makes a beautiful shot to win the game. So Bo moves to the semifinals, but who will he be facing? Let's find out with our final bracket, where we start off with Fang versus RT. RT wants to just be left alone to get his power cube, but Fang does not want that to happen. He does manage to get away, but then makes the horrible decision to not heal, so Fang closes the distance and takes him out. Kaze takes the fight to Gale right away, but ultra legendary she is not, as Gale takes her out with ease. Now Terra and Ollie both start out getting power cubes, but Terra gets bored and decides to go fight instead. Ollie does a kickflip and takes the jump pad, but Terra, she was unimpressed and takes him out with her super. Now Angelo Bot has zero chill and rushes straight into battle, but clearly he forgot how to charge his attack, so Spike is able to take him out with plenty of health to spare. Lou and Chuck clash early on, but then Chuck decides he wants to find out if trains can fly. Lou freezes him a few times, but then Chuck reminds us that steam definitely beats ice. Kit tries to get the edge on Ash before he can build that rage up, but he has just too much health and he takes out this annoying little cat with relative ease. Max rushes Clancy right out of the gate and makes him panic as he jumps away to safety. But we all know how Max is though, as she rushes him down and takes him out. Hank and Amber are next, but once again, these bots don't know how to charge an attack and Amber melts him away. Starting us out in round 2, we have Crow and Fang. Now at first, things look pretty bad for Crow as Fang just tanks his shots, but with Crow, it's all about patience. Crow gets an insane dodge with the super and slowly starts ticking Fang away and keeping Fang's health low. Fang does manage to make a comeback in the center, but Crow chases him out not long after. Now, even though it was a close game, after a match full of chipping away, Crow's poison finally kicks in and he kills Fang, steals his gems, as well as his hopes of moving on to round 3. And even though Nani has some crazy range, Gale's burst damage is just way too much for her to handle. Next up, we have Jessie versus Terra. And even though Terra's damage potential is high, She doesn't know when to attack and when not to. This pattern repeats itself over and over again until Jessie gets all the gems and wins the game. Penny starts her battle against Spike very strong, keeping him away and being careful not to get hit by too many spikes. They do end up taking each other down, but the gems land on Penny's side, which is just enough for her to collect them in time and take Spike out. Frank is up next against Chuck, and even though Chuck can do some good damage, and he also has pretty good health, Frank just has more of everything. And because of that, he gets an easy win. Pam is able to out-heal Ash and slowly chip away at his health. Now, she does almost throw the game though, and Ash took control of it for a while. But after a very lengthy fight over the gem mine, Pam ends up coming out on top because of just one single gem. Max and Barley duke it out next, and to my surprise, Barley starts out very strong. Max does get one kill on him though, and things are not looking great. But Barley bides his time, farms up some gems, and then catches back up. Max panics and rushes him, and that was a huge mistake because she gets taken out and loses all of her gems and gets eliminated. And even though Amber does have the DPS, she doesn't have the range, so Gus ends up taking her out over and over again. And with that heartbreaking defeat, Amber is gone. Now for round 3, we head back to Brawl for the last time, where Crow and Gale gear up to either move on to round 4 or get eliminated. Crow uses his speed and daggers to chase Gale away very quickly, grab the ball, and run it in for a lightning fast goal. Gale puts up a fight though, as he has the DPS, but Crow just isn't giving him a chance. Gale decides to just try to tank Crow's poison, and it actually works. But then Bot Crow unleashes a, let's just say, less than stellar super, and he gets taken out by Gale. And just like that, up next is Jessie and Penny, both very similar brawlers. She grabs the ball and walks it up the map for an easy goal. But Jessie takes her time, and with an absolutely beautiful goal, she wins the game to move on. Frank and Pam are up next, and it's the battle of the two chunks. Unfortunately for Pam though, Frank is just a bit chunkier. That first goal is easy, and the second one came just as easy, as Frank has just too much health for her to deal with. Barley faces off against Gus and once again surprises me with his damage. Unfortunately for him though, Gus had just enough to march the ball up and get a goal. After some back and forth, Gus grabs the ball once again, marches straight up the map, and gets his second goal. Starting us out in round 4, we have Jessie and Gale, both pretty good brawlers in Hot Zone, so this should be interesting. They start by taking each other out very quickly, but Gale does end up winning the next fight, which gives him a pretty big advantage. A few kills later, Gale has control of the center and a massive lead. Jessie does manage to take him out though and get some time on the zone herself. And after a few more back and forth moments, Jessie grabs control of the zone, throws down Scrappy, and keeps Gale away as he ends up losing the game. Frank versus Gus is next, and even though Gus pretty much can't miss here, he just doesn't have the damage, so time after time, he runs in, gets stunned by Frank, and gets sent back to spawn. Frank had him on the ropes from the second hit he spawned in to the moment that he lost the game. And with that, Frank moves into round 5. It's a tried and true method of just bum rushing the opponent and taking them out. And unfortunately for Jessie, it works like a charm. He even tries to get flashy and shoot a 3-pointer. Looking like me shooting there, Frank. But a few seconds later, he does get another shot. Now, Jessie does put up a little bit of a fight, but it's just not enough. And she even desperately tries to use Scrappy for help. But no matter how hard she tries, Frank is just too bulky, and he bullies his way for another 2 points. He tries to finish it in style with a 3-pointer again, but he misses, and Jessie takes that opportunity to get a goal of her own. So Frank decided to stop messing around. He grabbed the ball, took Jessie out, scored a 2-pointer, and won the game. So here we are. 90 brawlers eliminated and only 4 remain. Who will move on and who will end their journey here? Let's find out, starting in Brawl Ball, where we have Rosa versus Griff. Now, right from the start, Rosa rushes Griff, but Griff makes a comeback, absolutely demolishing with his super, and runs up the field towards the goal. Rosa's not only able to block it, but grab the ball and take a goal for herself. She takes him out once more and is just about to win the game when she gets too nervous. Or she just does what bots do. After a few back and forth moments, Griff is able to chase Rosa away and get a goal just in time for overtime. And with the walls now gone, there was no question that Griff was going to dominate her, and he does just that and ends up as our first finalist. He will either be facing Bo or Frank. Right away, Frank makes it very clear to Bo that he is not to be messed with, and Bo responds how any smart bot would, by just, turning tail and getting out of there. He does end up getting taken out, and Frank tries to make his move. Bo didn't want to let that happen though, and not only that, but he gets the first goal of this game. His moment of triumph, however, does not last long because Frank is back and ready for action, stunning Bo and taking a long shot to tie up the game. Then Bo decided it was time to make his move, so he grabs the ball and makes a dart for Frank's goal. He actually gets very, very close. Frank turns around, grabs the ball, throws up some angry emotes, just to rub it in, and then walks the ball down the field for an overtime victory. So then, here we are. The championship game. In one corner, we have the king of hit points and a massive hammer to match it. And in the other corner, we have a greedy gift store owner with a jar of tank-destroying coin. They decide to settle it like men. Bounty, shooting star. Starting out strong, Frank rushes up the center to grab a blue star and an early lead. Now, Griff does have a range advantage though and pushes him back to take the lead with just one star to spare. From there, their fights get even more close. After a long fight, they take each other out with Griff just barely taking Frank out after he got killed himself. And as you know, if you trade kills and bounty, you want to take them out after you get taken out. So this is good news for Griff. And Frank, well, he wasn't too happy about that, and once again takes the lead with a heavy hit from his hammer, making the score 6-8. But once again, Griff gets the lead because of the blue star. This time though, Griff decides to take the fight to Frank, so he rushes him and takes him out, putting him in the lead. That lead doesn't last long though, because Frank respawns, stuns him, and takes the lead right back. With 15 seconds left on the clock, Griff has to make something happen, and he's got to make it happen now. He desperately throws out his super, but Frank does what he does best and just laughs at the damage. In fact, not only does he eat the damage, but he ends up taking Griff out in the process, giving him an even bigger lead, making the score 12-15 with only 6 seconds left on the clock. And it's quite fitting, actually. Bots don't have brains, and Frank never needed one anyway, so Frank is the best bot in Brawl Stars.